Have you ever realized that you talk to yourself and then wondered why others don't? Don't deny it. You do. In your room, walking down the street in the middle of silence, you move your lips, whisper ideas, answer yourself. And for an instant, you feel the world disappear, and there's only that voice, yours, and another one you don't know where it comes from. But here's the curious part. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone can stand to hear themselves. Those who talk to themselves aren't like the rest. They have a different kind of mind. They don't know it, but they live between two worlds, the world of thought and the world of words. They don't need an audience, witnesses, or approval. Their dialogue doesn't seek company, it seeks truth. They're the ones who can't stand the falseness of social noise. The ones who've learned that when the world goes silent, their mind keeps screaming. And the only way to calm it is to speak to it. They'll tell you you're crazy, weird, not normal. But what is normal? Pretending you're okay while you're breaking inside. Staying quiet when your head won't stop spinning. Pretending calm when your inner noise is unbearable. No. Those who talk to themselves aren't broken. They're awake. They've crossed the border that separates what's thought from what's felt. They've chosen to face themselves without fear. That's why they do it. Because silence isn't rest, it's confrontation. Most people run from their thoughts. You face them, you look them in the eye, turn them into words, make them tangible. That makes you different. You're not weak, you're aware. You're one of the few who understand that the mind needs to speak to avoid overflowing. That thought, when left unspoken, rots inside. Talking to yourself isn't a sign of madness. It's a release valve for a mind that feels too much. And there's more. Those who talk to themselves don't seek answers from the world, because they already know the world doesn't have them. They seek them within, in the echo of their own voice, in that invisible dialogue that others fear to have. That's why those who talk to themselves tend to see further, feel deeper, think faster. They're the ones who can't stay silent because silence consumes them. And though others look at them strangely, they know a truth the rest ignore. No one understands the human being better than the one who has learned to listen to himself. Stay until the end, because you're going to discover a truth no one told you. You'll understand why those who talk to themselves think differently, feel differently, and live differently. By the end of this video, you'll know if you are one of them, one of those few who aren't afraid to listen to themselves. Because they've already understood that the voices that scare others are, in fact, the only ones that tell the truth. Do you know what really sets apart people who talk to themselves from everyone else? It's not eccentricity, nor madness, nor a distracted mind. It's the level of awareness. The one who speaks to himself isn't running away from reality. He's observing it from within. While others live trapped in the superficial, the one who talks to himself ventures into his own labyrinth. He doesn't seek entertainment, he seeks answers. And though it may seem like he's getting lost in his thoughts, in reality, he's mapping his mind, finding patterns others don't even know exist. Talking to yourself isn't an act of distraction. It's an act of focus. Because when you speak out loud, your brain reorganizes chaos. Each word is a line of mental code that orders what was once noise. That's why those who talk to themselves often solve problems faster, understand their emotions better, anticipate reactions. They don't stay trapped in formless thoughts. They shape them, bring them to light, transform them into something tangible. It's as if they could see their ideas in the air before them. What others think in silence, they experience physically, audibly, tangibly. And here's what no one says. People who talk to themselves are those who listen the most. I don't mean listening as a passive act. I mean deep, brutal, uncomfortable listening. They hear themselves say things that hurt. They face their fears with words. While others seek distraction to avoid themselves, they sit face to face with their own being and ask, "Why do you keep doing this? What's missing? What are you avoiding?" Their voice isn't company, it's a mirror. And only those who dare to see themselves without filters can truly change. But there's something else. Something few notice. Talking to yourself is also a way of creating reality. When you do it, you're programming your mind. Your voice is the vehicle of your thoughts, and the brain recognizes it as truth. That's why someone who constantly repeats, "I can't," "I'm tired," "I'm worthless," ends up believing it. But someone who speaks with strength, gives themselves commands, repeats convictions, rewrites their perception of the world. It's not magic, it's neuropsychology. Language shapes the mind, and those who talk to themselves know it, even instinctively. They know their words are tools, not noise. Think about this. The great geniuses of history talked to themselves. Einstein, Tesla, Da Vinci. They all had conversations with their own minds. They didn't do it out of habit. They did it because they knew that thought without voice dissolves. They needed to hear themselves to give form to the invisible. People saw them as strange, different, unsettling. But what they didn't understand was that this strangeness was their greatest power. While everyone else talked about the world, they talked with their inner one. Those who talk to themselves also perceive reality more sharply. They catch details others miss because their mind is in constant dialogue. They don't just observe what happens, they analyze it in real time. Their thought isn't a current, it's a debate. That's why they sometimes seem absent, distracted. But they're not. They're inside, where everything happens before it appears outside, where ideas are born, grow, and sometimes rebel. And here's the most unsettling part. Those who talk to themselves don't just listen, they transform with each conversation. Because internal dialogue changes the speaker. The more they face their voice, the more they evolve. Who they were a year ago no longer exists because their mind rewrites itself constantly. The one who talks to himself isn't the same each day. He's a being under constant construction. A version of himself that never stops. That's why they tend to be more introspective, deeper, and more unstable too. Because once you know every corner of your mind, you can never look at the world the same way again. Talking to yourself is the purest form of self-knowledge. It's not about filling silence, but about opening a channel between what you think and what you feel. And that, though it sounds simple, terrifies most people. That's why so few do it. Because when you talk to yourself, you can't lie, you can't escape. There are no masks, no excuses, no filters, just you and your words. And that's where the human being faces their most uncomfortable truth. Discovering that their worst enemy and only savior share the same voice. But those who dare, those who can bear listening without fleeing, those people change. They learn to master their mind instead of being ruled by it. They don't need external validation, nor seek noise to silence themselves. They've already understood something others ignore. Solitude isn't absence, it's a laboratory. And in that mental lab, while others fear silence, they build their own answers. So next time you talk to yourself, don't stop, don't be afraid. Listen. Because maybe you're facing the only dialogue that really matters. Maybe you're talking to the part of you that's been trying to save you from the noise of the world. Stay until the end, Because what you're about to discover isn't how to stop talking to yourself, but how to start truly understanding yourself. And when you begin to understand yourself, something changes irreversibly. You don't notice it at first, but the world becomes clearer, rawer. You stop listening outwardly and begin to hear with brutal clarity what's within. It's a point of no return, because once you learn to translate your own voice, you can no longer fake ignorance. What once seemed confusion now becomes messages. What was once noise now becomes truth. And that makes you different. It sets you apart. People who don't talk to themselves live anesthetized. They trust external voices more than their own thoughts. They need approval, direction, noise. They can't stand the idea of hearing themselves because they know that if they do, everything will collapse. And that's the difference. Those who talk to themselves don't fear collapse. They seek it. Because only by destroying the lie can they rebuild themselves with authenticity. That's why their minds are stronger, but also more dangerous. Because the one who dares to question himself endlessly ends up discovering things others would rather never know. And here's the strangest part. The more you talk to yourself, the more aware you become of the power of your words. You start to notice that everything you say carries an invisible weight. That a single phrase spoken aloud can alter your mood, your energy, your perception of the day. You feel it in your body. A positive phrase lifts you. A negative one drains you. And then you realize that talking to yourself is, in fact, a ritual. A constant invocation of emotions that materialize without your noticing. Every word you pronounce in solitude has a consequence. You're reprogramming your mind with every internal conversation. Books don't say this, but the inner voice is the most direct way to shape reality. What you repeat to yourself each day, you create. And those who talk to themselves know it without theory. Their mind is a machine of creation, but like all power, it has a dark side. Because when the dialogue is poisoned by fear, guilt, resentment, it becomes an invisible prison. And that's the real danger. When the words that should free you become chains. That's why those who talk to themselves walk a tightrope. They are the architects of their mind, but also the saboteurs of their own peace. They live with the awareness that every thought can build or destroy them. They don't tell anyone, but they feel it every day. That's why they withdraw into themselves. That's why they sometimes seem distant, absent, because their battle isn't fought outside, it's fought within. And the one who's never fought with his own voice doesn't understand how exhausting it can be. But there's something that balances it all: lucidity. Those who talk to themselves develop a mental clarity others can't imagine. They're observant, almost clinical, even with their own emotions. Not because they're cold, but because they know themselves. They've learned to detect when an emotion controls them and when they control it. And that's power. Real power. The kind that isn't shown, isn't boasted, but transforms every decision. And there comes a moment, after so many internal conversations, when the voice changes. It becomes kinder, wiser. It no longer yells, it guides. It no longer criticizes, it teaches. Because in the end, the one who talks to himself long enough ends up creating within a new figure, his own teacher, not an external voice, but a higher consciousness, the one that appears when you stop running from yourself. And when that happens, you no longer need answers from outside, because all the ones you were searching for were always inside, hidden beneath your mind's noise. That's the true evolution of those who talk to themselves. They're not crazy, they're awake. They're walking a path most will never walk. A lonely path, yes, but lit by their own voice. The same voice that once scared you, the same you thought was strange, the same that's now saving you. So if you've caught yourself talking alone, don't be ashamed. Be grateful. Because it means your mind is still alive. It hasn't given up. It's still fighting to understand you. It means you haven't let the world's noise steal the most important conversation of all, the one you have with yourself. Because in that dialogue, in that conversation no one else hears, is where freedom truly begins. And if you keep listening, soon you'll discover something that changes everything. That you're not talking alone, you're talking with yourself. And with yourself is where life truly begins. And when that inner life begins, there's no turning back. You feel it without knowing why. Shallow conversations tire you, crowds confuse you. The noise of others feels more like distraction than company. Because once you learn to truly listen to yourself, everything else sounds empty. Those who talk to themselves change the way they exist in the world. They no longer need to fill silence with other people's voices. They prefer to stay in their minds, where every word has weight, where every thought has purpose. And that, to many, is dangerous. Society fears those who listen to themselves. That's why it points at the one who talks alone, because it can't control him. A being who maintains a deep inner dialogue cannot be easily manipulated. He doesn't seek refuge in others' opinions, doesn't need anyone to tell him what to think. He's already found within himself the ultimate filter, his own judgment. That's why the world is full of people who talk to everyone but themselves. Because talking to yourself means confrontation, and confrontation hurts. The one who talks to himself sees what others can't bear to look at. He feels more, perceives more, but he also carries more weight. Because when you know yourself that well, you can't lie to yourself. You know when you're lying, when you're justifying, when you're pretending. And that hurts. But it also frees. Because only the one who sees himself with brutal honesty can truly change. That's the paradox of those who talk to themselves. They live more tormented, yes, but also more conscious. Their mind won't let them sleep. It demands answers, demands coherence. And here's the most fascinating detail. When you talk to yourself, your brain doesn't distinguish whether the conversation is real or imaginary. It processes it the same way. And that means that every time you talk to yourself, you're reconfiguring your identity. You're sculpting your personality with your own words. What you say about yourself becomes true. If you treat yourself with contempt, you wither. If you speak to yourself with respect, you bloom. That's why. And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. Those who talk to themselves have a power few understand. The ability to reinvent themselves from within, without permission, without witnesses, without noise. And that power transforms the way they face the world. Because when you master your inner voice, you no longer fear outer ones. Criticism loses its sting. Judgment becomes irrelevant. The one who has spent hours debating with his own mind doesn't fear anyone's opinion. Those who talk to themselves have already heard it all, thought it all, felt it all, before anyone ever said it. They're immune to noise because they've survived their own. But there's something even deeper. Over time, The one who talks to himself develops a special sensitivity to the energy of others. He senses it effortlessly. He notices when someone's pretending, when a smile is a mask, when a word is empty, because he's trained in the hardest kind of listening, his own. And when you learn to listen to yourself with surgical precision, you begin to hear the world on another frequency. Nothing deceives you, nothing impresses you. You see beyond what eyes can show. And although the world misinterprets them, those who talk to themselves don't live isolated. They live attentive. They're the ones who notice the details others miss, who understand what others feel before they say it. Because their mind is used to decoding signals, reading between the lines, translating the invisible. In them, there's a strange mix of fragility and power. They may seem distant, but in truth, they're absorbing everything. They don't talk much with others because they've learned that the most valuable conversation happens in silence. And yet there's a price, because the one who knows himself too deeply also risks drowning in his own depth. Talking to yourself can become a labyrinth if you don't know when to stop. That's why those who live in constant inner dialogue must learn something few understand: the art of silence. Not silence from fear, but conscious silence, the kind that comes after understanding. Because even the wisest mind needs to rest from itself. That balance is what separates the wise from the tormented. The wise talk to understand themselves. The tormented talk not to be alone. Both use the same voice, but with different purposes. One seeks clarity, the other comfort. And you, without realizing it, stand between the two. With every word you say to yourself, you're choosing between understanding yourself or hiding from yourself, between knowing yourself or confusing yourself. And there lies the true difference between those who talk to themselves and those who don't. The rest fear the echo. They fear facing what they might find. You don't. You're already inside. You've already opened the door. Talking to yourself isn't madness. It's a declaration of independence. It means you've stopped needing validation to exist, that you no longer fear your thoughts or your shadows, that even if the world calls you strange, you know the truth. Only those who listen to themselves can change. So next time you speak to yourself, don't correct it, don't silence it, don't feel ashamed. Because maybe in that moment, between one phrase and another, without realizing it, you're touching something others spend a lifetime avoiding. Real awareness, the awakened mind, the voice that doesn't lie. And if you learn to listen to it without fear, that voice won't just accompany you, it will guide you. Because in the end, those who talk to themselves aren't running from solitude. They're learning to master it. And maybe now you understand. Talking to yourself isn't a sign of strangeness. It's a sign of evolution. It's your mind testing its own voice, your consciousness practicing freedom. While others flee from their inner noise, you learn to dance with it. You've crossed an invisible line, the one that separates those who fear themselves from those who face themselves. Talking to yourself is the purest form of being alive, because in that conversation you're creating, destroying, and rebuilding your own universe. So the next time someone tells you you're crazy for talking to yourself, look them in the eyes and smile. Because what they don't know is that they're the ones asleep, and you've already awakened. Now tell me something. Leave me a phrase in the comments. The first that comes to your mind, without thinking, without filter. The one born from your inner voice. I want to read what your mind whispers when the world goes silent. If this made you think, subscribe. This isn't a channel to entertain you, it's a channel to awaken you. And remember this before you go. You're not crazy for talking to yourself. The real crazy one is the one who never listens. See you in the next video, if by then you're still the same.